It's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are?
Right now on the 10 o'clock news.
Breaking right now, chaos on campus at Columbia as police move in. You can see officers going in on a ladder, climbing through the window of Hamilton Hall, which protesters stormed overnight. Good evening. Thanks for being with us. I'm Steve Lacey.
And I'm Natasha Verma. Of course, this has all been escalating ever since the protests began at Columbia almost 2 weeks ago. But tonight, the NYPD has moved in just hours after Mayor Adams told protesters, quote, "This must end now." And it's not just Columbia. This is video just into our newsroom of CCNY in Harlem, where police are moving in with barricades. And we've got a live look at Columbia right now, where the NYPD operation is well underway.
All right, we have Fox 5 live team coverage tonight. Linda Schmidt and Jessica Formoso, both live in Morningside Heights, just outside Columbia. Teresa Priolo is at CCNY, where protesters are currently clashing with police. Let's start, though, with Linda, who is on the Hamilton Hall side, where protesters have been holed up tonight. Linda.
That's right. Good evening, first of all, to both of you. And there are literally hundreds of police officers out here, most of them in riot gear. Now, about 9:13, and I'm being very specific here, I know, 9:13, we received an email from the NYPD saying, quote, "The operation at Columbia has commenced." And that's when we saw police in riot gear move in here. Go ahead and take a look at this video here. This is a major piece of equipment that is used by the NYPD's ESU. And what this truck does is it allows them to get up next to a building and be able to access a building above the first floor. And that's what they did here. They all of the officers moving up the ramp after it was lowered next to the window, and then they broke through the window to get into Hamilton Hall. What they are doing here is they are retaking Hamilton Hall from the protesters who violently broke into Hamilton Hall overnight. They had used hammers to break glass doors in order to gain access to Hamilton Hall. And once they are inside there, they are moving through Hamilton Hall right now. They are searching for the protesters, most of whom both the mayor and the police commissioner say are outside professional agitators who have come in and who have hijacked what were supposed to be peaceful protests here on the university. And they believe that most of the people, the students here, that they were manipulated by these professional agitators. They are inside Hamilton Hall right now. They will be making arrests. At some point, they will be coming out of Hamilton Hall, but we don't know when that is going to happen yet. But I want you to go ahead and take a look at the other video as well. This is from overnight, showing those protesters, again, violently breaking into Hamilton Hall. They used hammers to break through a glass door. And then once they got inside, police and the mayor say they were intimidating other students who were inside. They wouldn't let other students into the hall who were supposed to be allowed access to the hall. In addition to that, they were using actual police-type barricades and bringing them into the hall, as well as using furniture to help barricade themselves, and they were intimidating the students who were inside. Now, at a news conference, and this happened earlier this evening, both the mayor and the police commissioner saying that what had happened here had turned into chaos, and that the tactics overnight showed that there had been an escalation, and that, quote, "things out here had reached the next level, and there was a real cause for concern." They also said that they have been in constant contact with officials at Columbia University throughout all of this, and that Columbia tonight, a senior city official telling me that Columbia University earlier, about 45 minutes ago, reached out to the NYPD and said, okay, you can come on campus now to clear everything out. The mayor at the news conference earlier tonight that he had given, along with the police commissioner, basically just giving everybody an ultimatum, saying, look, this is your opportunity to get out. This is your opportunity to leave the encampment. This is your opportunity to leave Hamilton Hall. and he actually urged parents to tell their kids, hey, get out of there. That was the warning sign that they were probably going to be moving in this evening because there was such concern. In addition to that, I am being told by a senior city official that a wife of an actual indicted terrorist has been on campus during these protests. Another thing that created major concern for the city. Now, like I said, the mayor and the police commissioner holding a news conference earlier tonight, and here's what they all had to say.
We urge those and everyone else violating Columbia's order to leave the area and leave the area now. And if you are a parent or guardian of a student, please call your child and urge them to leave the area before the situation escalates in any way. This is for their own safety and for the safety of others.
These protests have been and are being influenced by external actors who are unaffiliated with universities, some of whom have been known to our department and others for many years for their dangerous, disruptive, and at times criminal activity associated with protests for years.
For the individuals that are inside of Hamilton Hall, they will be charged with burglary in the 3rd degree, criminal mischief, and trespassing. For the individuals that are in the encampments outside, they will be charged with trespassing and disorderly conduct.
Okay, so as you can see right there, the NYPD, they are not messing around with this. They are going in full force, and they have had enough. Obviously, the university has had enough as well, and there had been growing concern, especially over the past 24 hours, after they had broken into Hamilton Hall and barricaded themselves inside, intimidating other students as well, they say. So as far as what's happening here now, it just started to rain, and we're just waiting to see what's going to be happening with Hamilton Hall, with the officers that went in there using that major piece of equipment again, which is used by ESU to access buildings in this way. But they are definitely making arrests. There are some of the demonstrators around us. They are chanting, shame on you, shame on you. Sometimes they start cursing. That could happen at any time. But as for right now, that's what's happening at this moment. I know Jessica Formoso, my colleague, is on the Broadway side of Columbia University, and you guys are going to be hearing from her in just a moment. But for right now, that's the very latest from here.
All right, Linda, thank you. And we do actually want to go to Jessica now again on the Broadway side of campus. Jess, I understand that you actually saw the NYPD moving in. Can you talk to us about what you saw?
Natasha, that's right. We are in the middle right here between Amsterdam and Broadway on West 114th. I'm going to set the scene for you so I can confirm for you tonight that we saw protesters come out arrested by police. The NYPD moved in, and we saw a number of protesters being removed from inside Columbia University. Now, I'm going to take you guys. Oh, we have video. OK, so that video that you guys are watching right now, that was from earlier over on Broadway, where we were when police were moving in, police in riot gear. And as they were coming closer to campus, there were pro-Palestinian protesters cursing at police, saying that they were the KKK, shame on you. But again, we saw a lot of police coming onto campus, and around 9 o'clock, like Linda said, that's when they moved in. They couldn't move in until Columbia University administrators gave them the green light, and around that time, that's when Columbia said, come in, you're allowed to come onto our property. And just minutes ago, we witnessed protesters, student protesters being walked out in zip ties by NYPD officers. There were a number of buses out here waiting for those protesters. One of them filled with protesters went down 114 onto Amsterdam. You're going to take a look. Jimmy's going to show you right there. There's a number of protesters, a number of police. Barricades are up, and they were chanting, shame on you, shame on you. Another thing I want to show you here, Jimmy, we can just turn the camera this way. The door dorms are right across the street, and you can see police, NYPD officers standing outside every single door. No students are allowed out or in of their dorms. We were told that they were told by university officials to shelter in place, and you're taking a live look. Students looking outside their windows at times chanting, cursing out the NYPD, and now you're seeing police officers moving towards Amsterdam. I don't know. This is all unfolding as we're speaking, so unclear why they're heading that way. We do see up 114 going towards Broadway, and Jimmy, we can just point out this direction. There's still 2 NYPD buses waiting there. They are not filled with students just yet, so it's unclear if more students are still inside the building and they're waiting to remove them. We have to say, though, that the NYPD has been very courteous to the media, allowing us to get as close as we are to see those arrests being made and those students being walked out. And now we're zooming into Amsterdam right now. As you can see, the police are walking towards Amsterdam, and you can hear the protesters that are out there yelling at police. This is a live look of what's happening here. Earlier, though, while we were on Broadway and 116th, when we saw police getting ready to come into Columbia University, we were able to speak to a faculty member. He didn't want to give us his name. He told us he was from the medical school at Columbia University, and he was honest. He said that he is very sad to see the situation, but did say that the administration was negotiating with these students. They even offered and said that they would invest money into Gaza to help those in need, but said, you know what, these students didn't want to negotiate. Let's hear from him a little bit more.
And this is very disruptive to all the kids that are graduating, and it's sad for them, and it's too late to reschedule and put it into Yankee Stadium or some other venue, and it's just unfair. At this point, you have to do something that will take care of the university and follow the rules, and that's it.
Gotta let them protest. Gotta let them come out and do what they do. You know, this is a free country. Can't block over this. Send riot police. Send squads out here.
Yes, they're coming out at us.
You're gonna be on camera when you come back.
Oh, sorry. So as you can know, this is a fluid situation, and we're just trying to see here what exactly is happening over by the buses. I do see police officers over there standing outside those buses, so unclear if more students are going to be brought out. We know that a lot of officers, as you saw live when we were reporting, walked down 114th onto Amsterdam, and right there you're hearing protesters. Now, where we are, like I said, we are on West 114th between Amsterdam and Broadway. It's unclear where this entrance leads us to, the building. I want to say could possibly be by the encampment, but I'm not 100% sure at this time. I'm going to investigate that to see what this entrance leads us to. But again, I can confirm that arrests have been made and police did remove protesters. They might be students. They might not even be students from Columbia University, because as you know, the mayor and the commissioner saying earlier today that a lot of these protesters don't even come to Columbia University. They're just agitators. But I'm sure police will be updating us as to how many arrests, who has been arrested, and the charges they're now facing. But again, those who are here at the dorm, they are not allowed in or out of that building. Police officers standing guard at every single entrance. We can see these students, I'm looking at them right now, that they're outside their windows, hanging outside their windows, just looking on everything that's happening here, just unfolding. But for now, I'm going to send it back to both of you, Steve and Natasha, and of course, we're going to stay right here, try to see if what else is happening and if more arrests will be made. Again, like I said, there's still 2 NYPD buses here waiting. So,
all right, and Jess, you know, obviously this is an incredibly delicate situation there. Just on the ground, what's your perspective on the percentage of people around you who are pro-NYPD versus anti-NYPD, if you had to guess?
No, there are more anti-NYPD. I mean, every chant that we have heard. I did see earlier on Broadway, and I counted. There were 5 Jewish students who were thanking the NYPD as they were making their way onto campus grounds. Everybody else there were cursing them out, saying, "You are the KKK. Leave. You know, why are you in riot gear?" So yeah, definitely anti-police here tonight.
And Jess, you mentioned that you saw some protesters coming out in zip ties, arrested by police. Do you know an idea of how many you saw coming out who may have been arrested? Have any of them been boarded then into any of those buses that you saw right behind you?
Yes, one bus filled with protesters left before we came on the air. That I can confirm. I'm not sure how many seats that bus has, but I can say it was possibly maybe a dozen, if not more, and arrested, I would say, from where we were, because we were able to move closer. But when it started happening, we were behind a bus that was blocking our view. So I actually saw someone walking out, and that's when I said to Jimmy Mitchell, our photographer, I said, look, they're coming out. And we zoomed in. We were able to get that footage. But I would say at least a dozen, if not more, have been arrested already at this hour.
Yeah, and Jess, also, I think, you know, this is a really stressful time for students. I mean, May 15th is graduation. The final exams going on right now. I know that there's shelter in place, but have you had the opportunity to talk to any students out there? I mean, any idea of just kind of the sentiment from them?
So I was able to speak to students when we were on the Broadway side. Now here, you know, NYPD has us in pens, so we can't really move around too much. But when I spoke to some students there, one student, a lot of students, I have to say, didn't even want to talk to us. That's first of all. And when I was able to speak to a student, he just told me that, you know, students have the right to protest and police have the right to be here, but they shouldn't be using force or going in. And hold on one second here, because here comes another bus. Jimmy, let's zoom in here. And I think there are protesters here. Yes, there are. Look, guys, live look at the protesters here. Some of them wearing masks. NYPD officers on that bus. You're taking a live look. This is the second bus that has left this area between Broadway and Amsterdam on West 114th Street.
Yeah, very well. Yeah, and obviously the protesters wearing the masks, outside agitators, etc. Obviously a huge issue, trying to hide their identity, of course. And you know, also can't help but think about the students in the dorms not being allowed to come or go. Obviously, they all have opinions of their own. That has to be tense. I hope things are staying calm inside the dorms as people share their own opinions about what's going on while they don't have the freedom of movement at this moment. All right, and the tensions also escalating at CCNY, where protesters have been clashing with police tonight.
Fox 5's Teresa Priolo is live in Harlem with the latest. Teresa, what do you see going on out there?
Sort of a similar situation here at CCNY that you're seeing at Columbia, although we do see NYPD buses empty now. I'm curious to see if what the situation that's unfolding at Columbia may potentially take place here in a little bit. Behind me, you see the NYPD. They are lined up as they have been for the better part of, I would say, the last 45 minutes or so. They also have barricades on trucks. They are standing by as protesters let their voices be heard here. It does feel as if we are at something of a tipping point here at CCNY. This marks the 6th day of protests. Each day they grow bigger and bigger. Chants of free Palestine, and as we saw earlier tonight, the occasional firecracker lighting up the night sky. Now, police clashed with those inside of what's known as the Gaza Solidarity encampment, a little earlier today. There has been a large police presence here, some in riot gear. There are also some reports of pepper spray and some arrests. Scrums of protesters being hauled off by cops as well, and we have video to show you of that. Over the chanting of the crowds, you can hear the NYPD telling people to disperse or risk being arrested for disorderly conduct. Back out here live, as many might know if you're following the news on this, it was announced that CCNY is now fully remote. I was talking to some Jewish students here who don't feel comfortable going on camera, but they said that there are essentially two parts of the campus here. There's the north side where we are, and then there's the south side. Both campuses are shut down, but those students who live on campus are being forced to walk all the way around and attempt to get in through another entrance because so many of the entrances to the college are shut down at this time. A lot of people going by, honking their horns, certainly, again, a lot of police presence, and a lot of chanting by protesters. If you saw in that video a little earlier, the most active part was right under that arch there, and that's where they were waving flags and also setting off firecrackers. At one point, the fire department came by, but again, things at this point do look calm. We are hoping that it stays that way. There are empty NYPD buses standing by, should that not be the case. That's the latest from Harlem tonight. Send things back to you guys in the studio.
Very well. All right, Teresa. A tipping point indeed does appear to be taking place as we speak. Now, protests have moved outside of the NYU campus. The university said it will take disciplinary action against students who refuse to leave the encampment on campus. It came after protesters defied a noon deadline yesterday from the school to get out. They'd been on the Green Street walkway since Friday afternoon. The school believes that outsiders played a role in these continuing protests. So far, officials have not given any details about exactly what punishments they may be facing. All right, we want to bring in retired NYPD detective Michael Alcazar, who spent more than 30 years with the NYPD. He now teaches at John Jay. Sir, thanks for being with us tonight. I'd like to just first get your opinion. Obviously, this is a very delicate situation, high-stakes policing. What's your perspective when you see the video we just showed earlier tonight?
It's a massive undertaking by the NYPD. The response was appropriate. They have strategic response groups on the scene. They have their critical response teams, ESU, and when they made that entry into the building, they were just trying to evacuate, like the professional agitators. So I think they did a good job. It looks worse than what it was because of all the protesters screaming, but when I'm watching it, it looks like the NYPD had it in pretty good control.
So the building was taken over earlier today, I should say, Hamilton Hall. I mean, what do you make of the response time of, 9:13 p.m.? Was that them waiting then for Columbia University to give them the all clear to enter campus?
Not sure when they received the all clear. It might have been strategic because people that work in Manhattan or go to school in Manhattan or leaving work from Manhattan were home already, and I think they did that purposefully so that there's less people in the streets, except, of course, the protesters.
And, sir, I'm wondering if you could sort of drill down on what the term outside agitators means to you in the context of these protests. Are these people being run by foreign governments? I mean, what exactly does it mean when you hear that term coming from the mouth of the mayor?
I mean, it has the potential for foreign governments, but we've seen this before in the past in New York City. There's always professional agitators. It's a big stage. They want to push their agenda. We've seen it in Zuccotti Park many years ago. So there's always people that take advantage of a situation. They're not necessarily, pro-Palestine. They might just be professionals that want to create havoc, and that's what they do. And it's good that the NYPD identified them, arrest them, and remove them from the situation so that we could protect the people that are actually protesting and, practicing their First Amendment rights.
I mean, really unbelievable sights that we saw at the top of this show of NYPD officers entering Hamilton Hall through the second floor window. I guess, walk us through. I mean, is it that they're trying to enter above the protesters? What's the mindset behind that response and going that way?
Yeah, potentially. They maybe the agitators blockade the entrance to the upper levels. So that's why they want to enter through the second floor and then push them down to the lower levels and put them in custody.
Yeah, and certainly we have these protests taking part at other schools in New York City and throughout the country too. Can you just talk a little bit about the significance of getting tonight done properly and the time frame do you think that these officers are working under? Is the mission to go in there, sort of dial down the temperature and just try to get it done correctly, however long it takes, or once they enter that building, is their clock ticking and they want this done as soon as possible?
I think they want to do it as safely as possible. Well, the NYPD doesn't want anyone to get hurt. They don't want it to grow any bigger, in my opinion. Columbia kind of run the risk of letting it grow a little bigger. They waited a little longer than other universities, so it just made the job a little bit more difficult for the NYPD. I feel like they should have nipped it in the bud a little bit sooner, maybe a few days ago. And again, I understand they want the safety of the students, Columbia's concerned about lawsuits, notifying the NYPD, so they were a little bit hesitant calling in the NYPD, but they've seen it's growing out of control, and I kind of blame Columbia for that. They let this happen, and now here we are, the NYPD's cleaning up their problems.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Also, in a lot of the footage, we're seeing metal risers. So obviously, Columbia's graduation prep is underway. I mean, they're going to have commencement in 2 weeks. Do you think, based on what we're seeing tonight, do you think that's an actual reality, having thousands of people now come to campus for commencement in 2 weeks?
Right. We heard that guy say that it's too late now to, do it at Yankee Stadium or somewhere else off campus.
Yeah, I think 2 weeks is enough time. They're going to quell the protesters. They're going to remove the professional agitators. The protesters will probably not be allowed into campus after this. They might still protest like on the sidewalks and the streets. We'll have a detail of police officers to keep that under control, make sure it's peaceful, and hopefully, I think 2 weeks is a good time frame, and hopefully the students can celebrate their graduation.
All right, Michael Alcazar, we appreciate your perspectives as always. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.
All right, and social media, of course, has been blowing up as police have moved in on Columbia tonight.
And Sharon Crowley has been monitoring it all and is live in the newsroom with the very latest. Sharon.
Yeah, that's right. Social media filling up with people posting about what is happening on Columbia's university's campus. Let's get right to some of those videos. A student group identifying as pro-Palestinian. You can see them struggling with police there. You can see their interaction there. Cops moving them along, though. We have another video if you want to cue that one up next. You will see in it a giant emergency vehicle that we've been showing to you a couple of times as the NYPD scuffles with them, and then as you can see that vehicle approaching Hamilton Hall to move students out. Protesters broke windows and occupied that academic building at Columbia University overnight. This after they had demanded the university divest from Israel. This after they, of course, had been camping out on the campus there in tents. A little after 9 tonight, though, the NYPD entered at the university's request. Leadership team telling Fox 5 they tried to negotiate with the student demonstrators, but it did not prevail. Earlier in the day, the university curtailed access to the campus ahead of this move by the NYPD. Now, we just got a statement from a spokesperson at Columbia University. It reads in part that the decision to reach out to the NYPD was in response to the actions of the protesters, not the cause they were championing. We have made it clear that the life of campus cannot be endlessly interrupted by protesters who violate the rules and the law. And Natasha and Steve, just a little bit more from that statement. They wanted to let people know that this had become a dangerous situation, one that they had to address immediately for the safety of the students and the faculty, some of whom were directed out when those students occupied Hamilton Hall.
It's been on full display. All right, Sharon, thank you. And for the latest on the protest at Columbia and on campuses across our area, you can download the free Fox 5 New York News app. Of course, we're all over this breaking news tonight as police, NYPD, enter the Columbia University campus and start making arrests.
All right, let's take another live look at Columbia. Our reporters fanned out all over Morningside Heights. We're going to have more team coverage straight up.
You're watching the 10 o'clock news.
All right, back to our breaking news tonight. Police making arrests on the campus of Columbia University as we look at video from around 9:13 tonight when police, members of the ESU, entered Hamilton Hall on campus, which had been occupied in the early morning hours by protesters as part of this ongoing movement on college campuses.
Yeah, that's when Columbia gave the authority to NYPD to enter campus. This is where protesters had been holed up all day. What we've also learned is that a majority of the protesters inside there were outside agitators who had then come in and pretty much hijacked and taken advantage of the situation. Linda Schmidt is right outside there. If we can go to her, I'd like to talk to her too about what she's seeing. Linda, you also mentioned that a senior city official told you that the wife of an indicted terrorist was on campus. Talk a little bit about that and what you're seeing.
That's right. Well, first of all, I'll get into that in just a moment. But what's going on here now is that some of the demonstrators, most of them are now gone from this particular area. There's just a handful of them here, and they're just saying a few chants off and on. It has quieted down substantially since I came to you guys at the top of the hour. That's because once that major piece of equipment moved in, and we're going to go ahead and take a look at that video right now that's used by the NYPD Emergency Service Unit. It's called the Bear, and this is a major piece of equipment here, a vehicle which allows then the NYPD and ESU officers to gain access to a building which is above the first floor. In this case, they entered Hamilton Hall on the second floor, breaking in through a window, getting inside, because their main objective here was to get inside and get those protesters, most of whom were outside professional agitators. That's what the NYPD and the mayor both said earlier tonight, to get them out of Hamilton Hall, because they have been barricaded inside there. They had been intimidating, according to the police and according to the mayor, intimidating other students inside the hall that were not part of this protest in any way, and they had broken in overnight. Now, Jessica Formoso, my colleague, she's on the other side of campus. I'm on the Amsterdam, the backside entrance, and then Jessica is on the Broadway side. So she saw when those officers entered Hamilton Hall on my side, what they ended up doing was going through Hamilton Hall, rounding up everybody that was inside who they were going to arrest. They made the arrests, and then they came outside and they exited campus on the Broadway side where Jessica was. That's why she was able to talk about and show you that video of people coming out. They had zip ties on, and they loaded them up into buses, and there were several buses filled with protesters who have been arrested here tonight. The other thing, the mayor and the police commissioner held a news conference earlier this evening, and it was basically to say, and I'm paraphrasing here, just in layman's terms, basically saying, look, enough is enough. The situation here has escalated. It is causing real concern. We are genuinely concerned about the safety for the students and the faculty. They felt that the protests that started out as peaceful, that's what the city was saying, that the protests were hijacked by these professional agitators who come in, who we have seen this with other major demonstrations that have gone on around the country in the past, say, 4 to 6 years. Some of these people are the same people. They travel around the country, and this is what they do. So that was a major concern for the mayor. It was a major concern for the police commissioner, and obviously it became a major concern for the university, because the university reached out to the NYPD and gave them permission to come onto campus. That's when we were contacted. The media was contacted about 9:15-ish, saying that the operation here at Columbia had commenced, and hundreds of police officers moving in, most of them in riot gear. Now, at that news conference earlier tonight, the mayor talked about this, the police commissioner talked about this, and the head of counterterrorism for the NYPD talked about the situation that was going on here and the growing concern for the safety of everyone. Here's what they all had to say.
We urge those and everyone else violating Columbia's order to leave the area and leave the area now. And if you are a parent or guardian of a student, please call your child and urge them to leave the area before the situation escalates in any way. This is for their own safety and for the safety of others.
These protests have been and are being influenced by external actors who are unaffiliated with universities, some of whom have been known to our department and others for many years for their dangerous, disruptive, and at times criminal activity associated with protests for years.
For the individuals that are inside of Hamilton Hall, they will be charged with burglary in the 3rd degree, criminal mischief, and trespassing. For the individuals that are in the encampments outside, they will be charged with trespassing and disorderly conduct.
You know, one thing that I'm noticing here, too, even from the start of my live shot here, I'm noticing even fewer protesters that are around here. I see 2. There were hundreds here earlier when we got here tonight. And as they were bringing in all of the equipment and that major vehicle, which is called the Bear, the NYPD ESU unit uses, there were hundreds of protesters around here. And they were chanting, screaming, shame on you, the Intifada forever, which is what they kept saying, and we've been hearing that throughout these protests since they started. And another thing here, Natasha, you had asked me about the senior city official telling us that one of the women who was on campus here for this protest is the wife of an indicted terrorist, somebody who is known to the U.S. government as being a terrorist, and that she was here on campus, and they have pictures of her on campus. And that's one of the major concerns here for the mayor and for the NYPD as well, because you have these students, they may start, these protests might start out as peaceful, but then they can quickly get manipulated by people who are professional at doing this, and then they create chaos. And the mayor is saying that is what we saw happen here on this campus. And after they broke in overnight last night and using a hammer to break through a glass door and then physically dragging in barricades. Oh, wait a second here. Are you guys live on me right now? I don't know if you're rolling video, but there are some emergency service vehicles now. They are now pulling out here. There's just a line of them. They had lined up here at about 8:30, 8:45 tonight, and now they are pulling out. Like I said, it's quieter on my side than it is over on Jessica's side, because that's where they're bringing anybody that they arrested, they're bringing them out on her side. So things have definitely quieted down here. But again, the point that I was making is that the mayor and the NYPD very concerned because these students can be very easily, some of them, very easily manipulated, and they're saying that's what happened here. And it was turning the situation into chaos, especially after they broke into Hamilton Hall last night and they were intimidating students. Also, there were some janitors inside that they reportedly were intimidating, and they were trying to hold them back. And finally, the city and the university said, look, this is totally out of control at this point. We've got to move in there before anybody seriously gets hurt. And that's what the mayor was talking about tonight, and that's why the university stepped up and said, you know, we have been talking constantly. They had been in constant contact with the mayor's office in the NYPD about everything that was going on. It wasn't like there was ever a moment that the three of them were not connected. They have been talking around the clock about this situation here, and finally the university said, look, we have no choice. We got to be able to move in. And one thing about the NYPD, and I just heard the expert that you guys just did the live interview with saying they handled this quickly, and they did. They came in, they went into the building, they rounded people up, they arrested them, they brought them out on the other side on Broadway, they got them in zip ties, and they put them on the buses, and they got them out of here. It was bing, bang, boom. We're here, we're doing our business, we're getting in, we're cleaning this up, and we're moving out. This is not going to be some dramatic event that's going on here that's going to drag on for an hour. We're getting in, we're doing our business, and we're getting out. And that's what they did.
Yeah, it's a hopeful moment, hopefully, right now. Knockwood, certainly all those police officers showing up seem to help heighten people's awareness of the gravity of the situation taking place on campus. So we'll hope that continues to be the case. And for more perspective, we have former NYPD officer Bill Stanton, who joins us now on the phone. Officer, thanks for joining us right now. Give us your impression of what we're seeing on campus right now. You just heard Linda's report. It seems like a lot of the students have cleared away who are outside the buildings. And also just walk us through that escalation we saw overnight when people with hammers broke in and occupied a building. It seemed like that was clearly the tipping point for the NYPD to move in.
Thank you. What we see going on is what we see going on air, and then there's a subtext, and within that subtext, multiple layers. What do I mean? Well, what we think we're seeing is college protesters, right? But there are professional protesters in that crowd. There are agitators in that crowd seeking to create anarchy, looking to create that tipping point to make it go viral in reality, if you will, because the world is watching what's happening, and how this either escalates or de-escalates will dictate what we see in the coming days.
I think, where Linda was at 116th Street, it just seems like it's quieted down. She counted maybe a couple of protesters. Do you think, from what happens now, do you think that they've contained the situation and they're moving people out? What happens now as we move forward?
Well, what's going to happen is that what's going to be interesting to see is how this plays out. Those arrested, are we going to see them with, the victory sign, waving flags in the air as they get out with no charges pressed? And then they'll negotiate college amnesty, if you will, ergo rewarding this bad behavior. That would be concerning to me. Versus, we hear of these no-tolerance policies. If there ever was an instance to institute it now, to your point, when they were breaking into the building, that should not be tolerated, and that should be prosecuted to the fullest extent.
Right. We heard the NYPD went in with the blessing of the university tonight. What is your perspective on that negotiation? Do you think that was the NYPD constantly asking Columbia, enough, let us get in there, or was that Columbia being like, please come in and put an end to this?
Well, this is all going to be supposition on my part. For me, I'm in safety and security. That's first and foremost. But there are people thinking about their jobs. There are people thinking about elections. There are people thinking about the headlines tomorrow, and that's above my pay grade. But you can bet dollars to donuts that was going on. If I make X decision, will I be hired? Will I keep my job, or will I be fired? So the long answer to your short question, I think the NYPD was ready to go. What I'm not understanding is if a crime was committed on campus, let's say they were saying that someone in the janitorial staff was held against their will. If that's case in point, Columbia has no say whether the police come in or not. The police go in. Crime's being committed. Someone's being raped. Someone's being shot. A crime is occurring. It's not like the Indian Nation reservation where Columbia has the autonomy to allow or not allow in. So I'm interested to hear if any crimes actually occurred and the cops did not respond to that, or were they just waiting, allowing the tents, essentially a squatters situation.
Right. It's not a sovereign nation. That's a fair point you make there for sure. All right, Bill Stanton, we appreciate your perspective. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, for the latest on the protest at Columbia and on campuses across the area, you can download the free Fox 5 NY News app.
And, of course, we're all over this breaking news tonight as police enter the campus and start making arrests. This is a live look at Columbia University. As we've been showing you all night, our reporters fanned out all over Morningside Heights, Broadway. We'll have more team coverage straight ahead.
All right, welcome back. The tension's also escalating at CCNY, where protesters have been clashing with police tonight.
Fox 5's Teresa Perillo is live in Harlem with the latest. And Teresa, it appears behind you that police might be moving into campus now.
So, Steve and Natasha, what is interesting is they haven't actually gone through campus. Everything that is happening on Amsterdam. I do want to tell you before I show you what's happening behind me. There's a lot of people yelling around here. So if you're at home, you're going to hear language that you wouldn't normally hear during a nightly newscast. It is happening everywhere, and we'll do our best to try to block it out. NYPD are starting to make some arrests, as right here. We have seen this time and again tonight. This is probably the 5th or 6th person that we've seen hauled off. Photojournalist Lenny Torres watching that, and you can see this has been happening repeatedly. The cops had a whole wall of police officers lined up, and then there was a time where protesters started to... Lenny. There was a... We're going to just take a minute. Hold on. Cops are attempting to arrest this man right here. So, as I was saying, there was an entire wall of police officers that were standing by calmly, and then at one point, a group of protesters from across the street on 139 and Amsterdam started antagonizing the officers, kicking boxes and throwing things at them, blocking traffic, and so the officers slowly started to move in, and in these situations where tensions are high, one group clashes with the next, and this is what you have. This is probably the seventh or eighth protester that we've seen arrested here tonight. When we talked to you at 10 p.m., we said we felt like things were at a tipping point, and it appears as if that is exactly what is happening. Somebody has even hung a Palestinian flag over the gates of CCNY. At one point, they were standing up there waving the flag, and they hung that there while also setting off firecrackers from around and inside the arch there. This is basically, Steve and Natasha, what we are seeing here tonight. The bus is still empty, but it is filling. The longer we stay here, the fuller it gets. Cops are attempting to keep their cool as these protesters are engaging with them and antagonizing them. That is the best way that we can put it. Everything was calm and peaceful until it wasn't. We haven't heard of any injuries here, not by police officers or protesters. And so this is what is happening here. Again, they have not gone onto campus. This is all happening on city streets. I'm going to bring you down this way. Amsterdam is closed off to all traffic, in part because of what you're seeing down there, which is debris in the middle of the road.
On the sidewalk, guys. On the sidewalk.
All right, let's go this way. Excuse me, officer. All right, Steve and Natasha, we're going to send things back to you. Thank you. Steve and Natasha, we're going to bring things back to you. The individuals that are standing here on this side are agitated, and they have no problem engaging. So we'll send things back to you before you hear something you don't want to hear.
Well said. Yeah, 7 or 8 arrests. She said she's witnessed, and obviously things going downhill a little bit right now as things sort of come to a head at CCNY after we saw a similar situation at Columbia a short while ago.
Yeah. All right, we are staying on top of all this breaking news tonight as police, again, have entered campus of Columbia University. They've been making arrests. You saw live at CCNY as well that arrests have been made. And we've got a team of reporters out there. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back. We've got some new video that we want to show you of NYPD police officers arriving to Hamilton Hall as they entered Columbia University campus after the school gave them authority to go on campus around 9:13 p.m. tonight. Again, a very delicate situation as the officers approach Hamilton Hall to that wall of protesters right in front to essentially retake Hamilton Hall after those protesters had been holed up inside the hall there. So you could see that it was a very delicate situation. And there were some clashes from this new video that we're seeing.
Yeah, a massive show of force on behalf of the NYPD, as you see here, to maintain order, regain order at Columbia University. Certainly, New York City, the world's greatest stage when it comes to protests, things like this. The flip side of that, the NYPD has been in similar situations before and is trained to deal with scenarios just like this, although we certainly don't see them every day, thankfully. But it does appear things right now are in the process of getting under control once again at Columbia. Again, all this happening within the last 2 hours. We saw really amazing footage. Well, you see there, police officers rolling down the steps with presumably someone they were arresting who refused to leave. You can see the arrest taking place, police using zip ties. Obviously, this is a heightened situation taking place on a college campus, so there are all sorts of issues when it comes to handling this gingerly and not using any more force than necessary. But we, of course, reached the point tonight when we saw that hall overtaken, people barricade themselves inside, some of whom we're told are outside agitators with no ties to the university, that something had to be done to prevent anyone from being hurt.
And we want to bring in right now Michael Alcazar, a former retired NYPD detective, also hostage negotiator, so you have great experience in these kinds of situations. Talk to us about these professional outside agitators, because we've learned in the last hour from Columbia University that these guys knew what they were doing. Talk about that, I mean, and also the police response to with using the bear to enter in on the second hall of Hamilton Hall.
Yeah, these professional agitators, they don't care about the students. They don't care about the students' cause. They're just pushing their own agenda. They're essentially the head of the snake, and the NYPD had to chop it off. And they brought the bear in to climb through the second floor window because they probably were barricaded on the first floor, so they had to gain entry elsewhere to push down these protesters and these professional agitators.
You know, and they talk about the idea that some of these people were known to the NYPD from previous protests. You mentioned Zuccotti Park, of course, a reference to Occupy Wall Street back in 2011. How does the NYPD stay up to speed on the people they have taking part in these protests. Obviously, we've got a whole new scenario now post-COVID with people wearing masks to obscure their identity. Social media is a huge part of this. Can you just sort of talk about the intelligence gathering that the NYPD undertakes to try to get the clearest picture of exactly what they're walking into when they decide to make a move like they did earlier tonight?
Well, they might be using surveillance video. They might be using drone technology. We have a database of these professional agitators that we've arrested in the past, so we can look at their photographs, see if we can identify them. Most of them don't have college identification, so that's a dead giveaway. And once we identify them, we remove them, and hopefully the protesters leave peacefully along with them.
Again, these protests at Columbia have been happening for the last 2 weeks. We saw the tipping point tonight. Did the idea of the majority of the protesters being outside agitators surprise you? I mean, I remember in the beginning of it all, we saw these tents. They looked all the same. They looked professional in a way, and now we're kind of getting confirmation of who may have been behind this. Does any of that surprise you?
No, it's not surprising. Like I said before, it's New York City. It draws a lot of these professional agitators. If Columbia let this go any further, I fear it would have been more dangerous for the students and the staff. Like we had in Occupy Wall Street, that just was overdrawn. We definitely didn't want that to happen again in the colleges, especially with students. In the past, with these agitators and these criminals, they committed assaults and rapes in these areas. So it was good that Columbia finally requested the NYPD to remove the protesters and these agitators from Columbia's property, because it should have been done several days ago for the safety of the students and for the safety of the staff.
All right, Michael, we do appreciate your perspective. Of course, the moment of truth happening right now at Columbia and CCNY in Harlem. Things really started to take shape about 2 hours, under 2 hours ago, but a lot has happened in that time. We'll be right back in just a moment.